Welcome. We're just letting everybody into the session, so we will be starting very, very shortly. Lovely to see so many people here. Definitely got that end of term kind of feeling this week, haven't we? So thank you so much for coming along this evening, and we'll be starting really shortly. Okay, I think that is everybody in. So we will make a start. Next slide, if you don't mind, please, Katie. So welcome everyone to this upskilling webinar on filming dance for screen. The webinar is presented by Udans UK, and we're the sector support organisation for dance and the organisers of the Udans Festival 2021. Your session today will be moderated by myself, Laura Nicholson, Head of Children and Young People's Dance at Udans UK, and my colleague Cameron Ball, who is the Udans Festival Manager. And the session's also been supported by Katie Stevens, Udans UK's marvellous office manager, and she's going to keep everything running technically beautifully tonight. We're thrilled to have Jo Cork with us as your guest speaker to provide guidance and top tips on capturing dance that has specifically been made to be viewed on screen. Jo is a London-based independent dance and film artist, and her recent projects include working with ZooNation, the Kate Prince Company, and The Place. And Jo is also a resident artist at Chisenhale Dance Space. We hope that from today's session, you'll learn some practical, creative skills which will enhance the way you film dance, which is particularly relevant for Udans 2021 applications. Today's session is a webinar, which means that your camera and mic are not on and you cannot be viewed or heard by the other participants. We will be using the question and answer box and the chat functions, and there'll be a little bit more on that shortly. Next slide, please, Katie. So before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about who we are and why we're presenting this webinar to you today. Udans UK is the sector support organisation leading the way to a stronger, more vibrant and more diverse dance sector. As Head of Children and Young People's Dance, I believe passionately in the power and the importance of dance and its ability to transform and improve lives. We believe that all children and young people, regardless of their starting point, should have access to high quality and either free or affordable dance experiences. And the Udans programme really helps us work towards that goal. I'll now hand over to Cameron, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about Udans and about how this session will help you with your application. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, everyone. Udans is the flagship youth dance programme of Udans UK and is a national programme of events offering young dancers opportunities to perform and enhance their knowledge of dance. There are Udans events that take place all over the country, and over the years, these free opportunities to perform and learn have reached over 200,000 young dancers. The Udans regional platforms are brilliant events which showcase the talents of dance groups in different regions around the country. These platforms also form part of the selection process for the Udans National Festival, where each region is represented at a huge national celebration of dance at a different host city each year. Diversity and creativity are at the heart of Udans. We welcome choreography in any style of dance and encourage groups from all backgrounds, those with dancers with disabilities, and from school groups, youth dance companies, private dance schools, and some really keen individuals. Of course, this year, with the events being so busy, with hundreds of young dancers normally travelling and taking part in close proximity to each other, we had to reformat the way Udans is presented. For the National Festival in July this year, we created Udans Digital 2020, which was a free online event and involved 5,000 young people. And now I'll tell you a little bit more how Udans 2021 will operate. Next slide, please, Katie. Thank you. We really encourage you to create work to apply for our Udans regional platforms, which will be held in spring 2021. These platforms will be held across the country and all will be delivered online for the first time. You apply to the regional organiser, which is one of the English partner organisations listed here, or to your national contact in Northern Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. All of this information is on the Udans website. Applications close next spring, so there's still plenty of time to create an amazing piece. Each region's dates vary, so please check with your regional organizer. The online regional platforms next year will be very exciting events. Each will be run in a different way with a uniquely local flavour, but all will showcase videos of youth dance groups in online watch parties and streams. As these platforms are online next year, we are accepting filmed applications in 2 different formats. Udans on stage, for those who can meet in person and film in the studio or on stage. This is the more traditional route for Udans groups. Assuming you can work in a way that abides by government guidelines, you can create a piece in a studio and film this as part of your application. Last week, we delivered a webinar with a focus on capturing dance made for stage, and this can be viewed for the next few months on One Dance UK's YouTube channel. Or your other option is Udans on screen, and this is more for those who may be working remotely and want to create a dance film. That is a piece of dance that is specifically created as a screen dance to be viewed on screen and not as a live performance. And this evening's webinar is specifically focused on planning and creating screen dance pieces. These webinars are here to help you to create and submit a high quality video which showcases the talents and efforts of you and your group. The film submission will be that which is showcased at the online regional platform. So we want to upskill you and give you the tools to create something brilliant. If you're watching this webinar and not taking part in Udans, that's totally fine as well. There'll be lots of tips for you to take forward in your own work. So now I'll hand back to Laura, who will take you through how today's session will run.
Great, thanks Cameron. Next slide please, Katie. So we're really thrilled to have Jo with us today, and as you can see from Jo's biography on screen, she is an enormously experienced dance and film artist. And One Dance UK have recently had the pleasure of collaborating with Jo and ZooNation on film content for an educational resource pack to be released in 2021, which we're really excited about. This session is being recorded and it will be made available on our YouTube channel for the next few months. So if there is something that you miss, you can easily go over it again. Little bit of housekeeping. If you click on the question and answer icon, you'll be able to type in any questions that you might have as we go along. And we do encourage you to ask any questions, whether they're big or small. Jo will do her presentation and she'll talk you through the various aspects of planning, recording and editing a screen dance piece. Cameron and I will monitor your questions and generally speaking, we'll ask them at the end on your behalf, although we may interject, Jo, if that's okay, if there is something urgent. And we will do our best to get through all of the questions by the end of the session so we can all finish on time. We ask that you keep all questions to the Q&A box, just so we can see them easily in the one place. However, Jo is making the session interactive and she will ask you to use the chat function at times as well. And without further ado, I think that's everything. So I will hand over to Jo. Thank you, Jo.
Hello, thank you, Laura, thank you, Cameron. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for being here as well. So yes, I am a dance and film artist. I began as a dancer and started making film in 2015 and have started working with some installation work, in dance and digital work. And I suppose what I'm offering you today is I'm going to give you some logistical information about how to get the job done, how to get the recording done, and how to get the editing done, and sourcing the kind of things that you're going to need to source. But I'm also going to talk about how your thinking might shift creatively from doing choreography in the studio to making dance film. And so I'm going to offer you some things that screen dance practitioners think about, and I want you to take those as offerings really, rather than a kind of a schedule of how to make a dance film. Use your own creativity. There is no, it's a developing art form, and that's what's so exciting about it. You can do whatever you like, everything's legitimate. So I'd really encourage you to explore your own interests and take what I offer to you today as provocations and as things that are going to spark new creativity in yourself and in your students, hopefully too, if you're working with students. So the first thing I think to talk to you about is the concept of choreography for camera. And Screendance is Screendance. It's very much a hybrid art form. There's film practice involved and there's dance practice involved. So it's beginning to think about the side of the film practice. And I suppose what I would really encourage people to think about is also what Screendance is not. And it's a very different thing to film a piece of dance from the front, or to quickly shoot something that you've shot, that you've learned in a class sequence. And we see these videos all the time on social media, and they serve a brilliant purpose. They're fantastic. They're inspiring in their own right. They certainly encourage engagement and for people to go to the classes. But in terms of what they're doing artistically, it's not necessarily much. And we can, as artists and as creatives, we can do so much more. So we're going to start thinking about the aspects of that art form, yeah, and not just nicely film a nice bit of dance. Yeah, it's about more than that. It's about thinking about both things together and how they can together become something brand new, not just two things, yeah, shoehorned in. So the beautiful thing about doing choreography for camera, if there are any control freaks among the group, of which I will raise my hand to being one, is you can absolutely control everything the audience take notice of, which is one thing you cannot do on stage. You spend hours rehearsing a particular gestural movement and you ask the audience after and nobody noticed it. Everybody was watching the lift at the back. Whereas in film, you have absolute power to direct your audience's eye exactly where you want it to be. And that's a really fantastic, it's a fantastic thing to be able to do. It also means you've got to make a lot of decisions, because every bit of your dance, you need to decide the viewpoint for. So think about your choreography and what is it in your choreography that you really want the audience to notice. And this is a useful choreographic tool in the studio anyway. If there is nothing about a particular movement that you want the audience to notice, is it a useful movement to your choreography? You could choose, it might just be the gesture of a hand, and it might be the particular curl of a finger. It might be a slow blink of somebody's eye as they watch another dancer, and then we cut to another clip. So really think about what it is you want to show them. What do you enjoy about the choreography? What do you like about it? What particular frame of the choreography is moving your story forward or moving your piece forward and showing the audience that, making them feel the next thing you want them to feel. The other thing as well is we've spoken a little bit about it being a hybrid art form, yeah, and these two things really working together, not just being stuck, is what do the camera and the movement do together? If I'm watching, if I've got a completely fixed frame and I'm seeing a male dancer in his living room dance around the sofa, and my frame isn't moving at all, then I feel as the audience member like I'm witnessing that situation. I'm a fly on the wall, as it were. If the camera starts moving and feels handheld, then as an audience member, I begin to feel like I'm in the room with him, and I'm another person in the room. I'm not just a fly on the wall, and maybe my relationship to him changes. If I then start to see points of view or start to see close-ups of his hand whipping past me, then again, I feel closer still to him. And you might actually develop that. But there's how the choreography is being perceived is really changed for the audience by how you use the camera. So that one was about proximity, yeah, and how close. But another thing to think about is the environment behind. If you've got, let's say, a field full of daffodils, and you know a long sweeping horizon with the sun rising up, and you have a dancer there with a big wide shot, and they're quite small on the screen, then it isn't just the dance that's saying something in that image, in that film frame. Yeah. So is the field of daffodils relevant to your choreographic concept? Because if you're doing a dance about robotics and the development of technology, a field of daffodils isn't going to work for you. It's not going to help you deliver your concept. So yeah, and the other thing to think about then, I think this is the third thing, is how you can transform the choreography and make it very odd or very surreal. And I'm going to show you some examples of that now, and we're going to maybe have a little bit of a chat and an exchange. So I'm going to open the chat here to all panels and attendees. I'm going to drop a link in. Now this film is Concrete Kisses. It's by Eloise Mavronicolaou, who I had the pleasure of studying my MA with, actually. She's a really brilliant film artist. She made this in 2019. So I'm going to pop the link in a moment, and we're going to watch just the first 2 minutes of the film. So we're going to all separate out, go to our browsers and follow the link and watch this from 0 to 2 minutes. But do come back in 2 minutes to make sure you catch us, okay? Yes, Concrete Kisses, Eloise Mavronicolaou. There you go. Okay, I'm just going to give it 20 seconds more to hopefully get everybody back. Okay, so if I could ask you now, while the chat box is still open, if everybody who wants to, and hopefully we can all get involved. It's helpful if we all do. If everyone can pop in 1 to 2 words or a sentence, something that you noticed, something that you liked, or indeed that you didn't like, something that defines that film for you, maybe something that is interesting about that film for you. If you just go now in the chat box and have a look what other people are writing. I've got tilted view, camera never upright, love the textures and layers, sideways shots, love the different perspectives, flipping things upside down and sideways, the concrete, it's gone that one, the concrete being the focus of the shot, playfulness, isolated movements, created lots of illusion, made me curious about what I was seeing, visceral sensation, upside down, the closeness, framing, shots showing security cameras, concrete lines opposed to gentle arms, lovely. I like the sideways shots, close-up shots. Love the close-up, seeing the textures of the body and the environment, the confusing gravity, the quickness of frames, the movement fitting into the structures. The buildings were choreographed like the body parts. Beautiful. Gentle music and movement against harsh surface. Wonderful, amazing. It's a brilliant piece, I love it. For all the reasons that you've pointed out. There are a lot of close-ups, so we get really straight on sort of experience there, don't we, of how the effect of a close-up. It's not just about kind of impact and showing somebody's face or showing a teardrop, although that can be very effective at times. It makes us notice things in much more detail. We really do begin to understand the texture of something. You have a sense of the hardness of something or the softness of something. There's again, there's that relation between the wide shots and those close-ups. And in the close-ups, people have spoken about textures and softness of the skin, or the gentleness of her body, compared to those harsh lines of the concrete, which are of course accentuated, and our eye is drawn to them much more because we're on a sideways tilt, or we're upside down even sometimes. Our perspective is constantly changing, and so our brain is constantly working to figure it out. Now that's the National Theatre, and that's a building that if we don't walk past it a few times a month in normal times, a lot of us know the look of. And we wouldn't necessarily, it's a great building, but by using the camera in that way, she drew great attention to the architecture of it and the particular lines, the kind of the geometry of it, the mathematics of it. All of that contrasted with this very kind of soft, comfortable feeling dancer. And I think one thing that's really interesting about that film is that the choreography is there, and we have a sense of the characteristics of this being or this person, and how that person is making us feel the gentleness. But what that film is about, if it's about anything, is architecture, is the lines. And actually, by using choreography, they drew attention to something different, to something else, to the environment. And the environment very much was that film, yeah? So that's just really worth thinking about, because your choreography becomes a tool then. Your choreography can be, if you want it to be, a tool to draw attention to a different kind of a concept. And then, when we're in the studio and we're thinking about architecture and we don't have masses of money to spend on a set, we end up trying to sort of do that stuff with our body. And this is a different way of thinking about it, because we can actually use the building and we can contrast that with our body and do something maybe that feels more natural to us. Yes, and that's a really good example of what the camera and the choreography can do together. Yeah, just by tilting the frame, by by framing the body with the environment itself, as well as the camera, and creating these kind of shapes, causes all kinds of disorientation and confusion that then as an audience makes us intrigued. We want to watch more because we want to understand this kind of weird world that we're in, and this world that is being created because she's sticking to her rules of always shifting our perspective. So we're always waiting for the next change in perspective because she's delivering that to us all the time. Yeah, so we're hooked into that until it stops. Okay, I'm going to show you another one now. It's a short sequence, and this is called Fractured Frames. This is created by the Motion Dance Collective, but more specifically Anna Clifford, who is a dance and film artist who works with the Motion Dance Collective. I'd like you to just have a look at this film and see if you can have a think about the kind of emotions that it stirs in you, and if it stirs any emotions, and how it's doing that with the film, with the way it's using the film and the choreography. Yeah, so there is that link there. Let me know if you have any problems. And sorry, just bear with me one moment. We're watching that. So 4:41, that link will start at 4:40, and you're going to watch just over a minute, just to 5:45. Yeah, so watch just over 1 minute and then come back to us here. All right. Going to give it 20 seconds again. Okay, I'm just sorry, Susan, I've just seen your message. I'll pop that link in again and hopefully it will work. But you can maybe catch up on that one after the webinar. If you search Fractured Frames, Motion Dance Collective, you'll be able to find it. Okay, so again, that's a little bit more of a shake, that one. If you can pop in a couple of words or a sentence, what you liked, or perhaps it's absolutely fine to not like work, yeah, but see if you can tell us what it is you don't like about it or why you don't like it. Go. Uncomfortable and invasive. The switching qualities felt really powerful as they were both so different, made me feel relieved when the intense part switched. That's worth noting. Good, yeah, very visceral, uncomfortable. Like how the shaking, moving of the camera builds with the movement. That's great. Disturbing and gripping. The lack of seeing the dancer's face doesn't let a connection be made. Yeah, absolutely. I like the consistent shot on the same part of the body. I felt their frustration from the camera shooting their frantic arm movement from the back. Good. Traumatic experience, flashing images, raw. Good, yeah. Torment. It spoke to me of moving through a difficult time. Not enough movement, dance and music. Not enough movement, dance and music distorted. Filmed from behind as if being followed or watched. Felt like a horror film, the shake of the camera from behind the music, sorry. Intense and uncomfortable, but kept me gripped at the same time. Felt obtrusive and just back shot. It was so stressful when they were scratching their back, was such a release when it changed to slow. Yeah, that's a couple of people now that have mentioned that release. Music builds beautifully. Again, discomfort, quick cuts, disorienting. Use of dancer's breath created more intensity. Good, that's worth noting. Was it about body dysmorphia? We'll have to have a look up. Great. Okay. Yeah. So it's quite a powerful sequence, and I would encourage you to watch all of these films. All the films that I'm showing you today are publicly available at the moment online. So do go back and watch the full things. There's a few things to notice about that. That sequence that we just watched was made from 2 shots. One where she was wearing the pink top and one where she was wearing the sports top. Yeah. So it was just simple cutting, one to the next, one to the next, one to the next. But the rhythms by which she'd done that built up such a tension. And some of you have also commented that as well as that happening, the motion of the camera was also building at the same time. So that all of these rhythms, as they went forward, were developing this kind of speeding up, increased frustration, increased franticness. And that was what made it feel quite so stressful as it did, yeah? But actually the content of that sequence was very simple. It's just a lot of very quick editing towards the end, yeah? So it's worth noting that the content was simple, yeah? It's an effect that looks very impactful, but it can be made quite simply. Right throughout that film, it's called Fractured Frames, right? And throughout the film, the body is fragmented. And when I say fragmented, all I mean is that I can only see my elbow, or I can only see the dancer's lower body, or I can only see the dancer's foot. Yeah, so we're just fragmenting the body. And the effect that has, if you only see fragments of the body, is that you often become quite disoriented because you don't understand, you don't have an understanding of where the dancer is in the space. You may well understand that they're in a wood because we can see that the trees are there, but in terms of by which tree, or how far are we away from them, what is our relationship to them, that we never establish that because we never feel like a person watching, whether we're there or whether we're a fly on the wall. Yeah. So depending on how you play it, that can really be a useful tool with some themes. The fractured frame does have themes to do with the female body and the gaze on the female body. So she used those choices of camera framing really deliberately to create in the audience the kind of feeling that she wanted them to have. The other simple thing to notice about that film is the costume. Yeah, so it was just, she was wearing 2 different tops, but what that did, when she wasn't wearing the pink top, when she just had the sports top on, we can see then the redness of her back. And that is quite a powerful image. Now, I don't know for sure, but I can almost guarantee that redness is put on with some makeup, yeah, just some red face paint sort of swept across the back. And it's worth thinking about stuff like that, because if you think about the effects of things on the skin, or, you know, we're going to go and do this and this marking will just sort of happen on this tree and it'll be easy. Often things like that aren't as easy as you think they're going to be. They don't come as naturally as you think they're going to be. The first film I made, I was pinching my hands, and I desperately wanted this shot of the tops of my hands, and one of them was going to be red, and I had to use like face paint in the end, because you can't get it strong enough for the camera to pick it up in the way you want to pick it up. So it's worth thinking about those kind of prop type things that you think are going to be easy, because they might not actually come across on camera. So always have a backup plan to create that effect that you want. Yeah. There's also, it's the skin is really powerful in that. Yes. Skin often will always do something will always say something about vulnerability. So I think the revealing of more skin in when she wasn't wearing the top there and had those red markings on her back really encouraged that feeling of fear in us, and that vulnerability that we were feeling that the dancer had. Okay, how are we doing for time? Yes, so, okay, I'm going to show you one more, and then we're going to move on a little bit. So this one is a brilliant film. It's by Liz Agus, who I'm sure many of you will have heard of. She's an incredible artist, has made a few films and has had a lot to do with Screendance actually in the development of it. So this one is just over 2 minutes. So I'm going to give you a link that starts at 2 minutes 37, and I'd like you to watch till 5 minutes. Yeah, so it's just about 2 minutes 20. There's the link. Let me know if you have any problems. Give it 10, 15 seconds. If you're already back and you want to start writing your sentence or your couple of comments, this is kind of a love it or hate it one, that one. Okay, if you're just joining us back, please write your comments about that film there in the chat box for us to have a look. So I'll read a few. I love how the camera moved with the sound effects, no cut. Yeah, it was one long take. Love it, beautifully mad, me too. Simple, subtle, minimalistic, engaging. Yeah, not a lot happening and yet it was completely gripping, that's it. Claustrophobic, like a horror film, over the top. Loved the box. Oh, I can't keep up with you. Yeah, I found myself doing the movements with the dancer for some reason. Yes, that's always a good sign of a film, good film. Love the box moving around the screen. Great sense of illusion, which keeps the audience questioning what's happening. Absolutely. Great for me, less meaning, more interesting filming techniques. Loved its playfulness, love it. Felt physical empathy. Camera movement, making it feel like the box moves. Perspective using the white background was really interesting. Looked like she was coming out of my screen. Great, absolutely loved the box section. I really couldn't work out her floor. Disorientating, like a bee in a cell, but gave me claustrophobia. I liked it. It was a bit intense, but really engaging. It almost felt like stop motion animation. Great angles, simple and effective. Yes. Love it. Couldn't work out which way up she was. Buried alive. Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's a really kind of enticing bit of film, that, and it's actually, I have to say, it's one of my absolute favorites. It's just over 8 minutes long, the entire film, and I'd really encourage you to watch it. It is very much like a horror film. It has that feel about it, and it might be helpful for you. Some people certainly find it helpful to think about what genre your Screendance film is, because that will just help you kind of think about the kinds of shots that you want. Do you want shaky shots? Do you want that feeling of fear? Do you want light, bright, happy days with large landscapes? It doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly can be a helpful thing to think about. What genre is your Screendance film, and that might help you make some decisions about how you shoot it. The space is completely limited in that shot, yes, and somebody commented it's just one long take, but again, like with Concrete Kisses, the play is also in the camera, and what's really helpful to notice is that the camera is choreographed, and the camera is doing the choreography. The camera is absolutely a part of the choreography, yeah? In one of those moments where we tipped from a sort of a landscape box to a portrait box, the dancer wasn't moving. She was just pressing against and holding her weight as if she was bracing herself. I mean, our brains and our understanding and our thinking about how did they film that tells us, oh, they tipped the camera. But her movement is as if she is bracing, yeah? But there was no physical choreography. The choreography was done by the action of the camera. And the movement appeared before us, that she was moving, her figure was moving because of what the camera was doing. Something that's, yeah, there was certainly a feeling of being trapped in that. And I think there's also something worth noting about the coloring of that. That was a very desaturated shot. And a desaturated just means that you take if you were to completely desaturate a shot, it would become black and white. So you're taking out the sort of the vibrancy of the color if you desaturate. But she has such a shock of red hair that there's something quite sort of beautiful in the image about that it's mainly this whiteness and then this shock of red as well, which I think also probably lends itself to that horror genre feel as well. Again, yes, sorry, we've mentioned the one shot. Something that's really worth noticing in particular with that film, with every film, but this film does it so well, we can really learn a lot from paying attention to it, is how it uses sound. So we can hear brushes against the skin, and we can hear the movement happening, which is what connects us to it actually. And I'm sure that you might experience when you do see some films or footage of dance on social media where the person who's put it up has overlaid the audio of the track over the top of it. And you lose the kind of the squeak of sneakers against the studio floor, or you lose the kind of the weight of a body dropping into the floor. And, you know, for the purposes of those videos, it doesn't bother us. We want to just see what that person's done in class or whatever. But when you're making, when you're trying to make a dance film, what can happen if you don't have the sound of the movement somewhere on even just a low level under the music even in the film, is that it feels a bit disconnected when you watch it, because you don't have a sense of the weight of things, because you can't hear how loudly they're hitting. And also, you know, if you are thinking about textures and thinking about, oh, actually, yeah, it might be really interesting to try and get loads of close-ups and to try and film in lots of different environments, you also, sound does a lot for texture. Yeah, in fact, there's a real difference between hearing somebody's foot move against gravel as to hearing it move against a studio floor. And all of that audio information, as well as the visual information, is feeding into the experience that the film is giving us, and how much it's making us feel connected to it, and like we're feeling it ourselves, you know, and how invested in it we are as watchers, and how, you know, how much we're kind of gripped by it. So that's really worth noticing. What Liz Agus does in that film is, rather than use real sound for the movement, she uses an artificial sound that, and sometimes it sounds like it's bodily, it sounds like it might be the real sound, and sometimes it's like a horrible metallic squeak that would never, you know, our bones would never make, hopefully, as we move. Yeah. So what she does there is she uses the sound as a way to create this other world for us. And then when we see a very weird woman doing very weird movements, we don't feel that it's so weird, because we understand that we're in this weird world and that all of that activity is very normal here. Yeah, so the sound can be a really useful tool for you, and it can really add a layer of interest as well. You can kind of mess with the audience a little bit if you've got the sound of real sounds there, and then later on, as after your climax has happened, or after something has happened in the film, maybe things start changing with the sound. It can be quite a complex thing to do, but it can also be a really fun thing to do, especially if you do kind of keep it simple. It can be really, really effective. So this, all of these films that I've shown you, I think that one thing to really, really notice and embrace, and I suppose one of the things that I just really love about Screendance and that makes me really, really excited about it, is that with Screendance, and not on stage, I'm talking very much about the difference here between working with camera and working with film and working on stage works, is that the laws of physics don't apply. You can kind of change them. You've got control over gravity. You can freeze someone up in the air. You can slow them down or just cut it at the top of the shot. Yeah, you don't ever have to see them land if you don't want to. You can speed things up. You can slow things down. You can teleport into different locations and just flip from one thing to the other. And we're so often so used to working with the boundaries of the studio and looking at everything from the front, because that makes sense, right? Because that's how your audience is going to see it if you're creating work for a stage. But when you're making work for film, suddenly you have an entire sphere around your dancers, and you can look at them from anywhere on this sphere, anywhere, like down from the ground over the top. So you need to get to know your choreography in a different way. And I would really encourage you, as you're choreographing, as you're beginning to make material, to constantly walk in the studio. Don't stick to the front. Change the facings. Ask your dancers to face the back, ask them to face a different side, ask them all to face different directions, and walk around it, because you want to get to know how your choreography looks from the back, how it looks from the front, how it looks from this close up as opposed to this close up. And then you'll be equipped then to make decisions about which shots you want and which parts of the choreo. Okay, if this gesture is really important, is it also important that I see the fact that I'm wearing a yellow costume now? So I want to see the whole thing, or do I just want a close-up of that? Yeah. And those decisions, there are a lot of decisions to make, but also, if you're thinking about your choreography and how you're working the camera with the choreography right from the beginning, what you'll find is that those decisions are very intuitive, and those decisions almost make themselves, because if you've got a choreography that you feel confident with and you know what is important about it, or which parts of it are important, you'll know exactly where to go next with the camera. So I suppose that don't feel daunted by the prospect of having to look at your choreography and make a shot list or decide exactly how you want to film it, because the likelihood is that through the course of your choreographic process, if you've been thinking about the camera, you'll already know all of the answers. It's just kind of a matter of going through and writing it down and making a list. Another thing, and the other thing is use your hands. Yeah, as you're going around, actually just do this. I do this a lot. Just see what it's like just to look at the feet. Is that effective? And the other thing as well is to think about non-dance images. So when we're in the studio, we often bring things in to show the dancers, or looking at all sorts of whatever things for stimulus, or you might be explaining an image that's in your head to a dancer in order to help them gain the kind of performance quality that you want them to have in that moment. And now is the time to bring those images in and put them directly into your film. And all of that can help you to deliver your concept. Something that's really important is that film reads an awful lot faster than stage does. So on the stage, we might take 5 minutes to slowly introduce the dancers. And actually we might take the whole of the 3rd and 4th minute just to watch the 3rd dancer do something very slow at the front of the stage, because we feel the audience need that time to kind of understand what's going on. In film, things read in 10 seconds. So you're going to find that the choreography sections that you want are going to be a lot shorter, and what you need to understand is that your audience is going to need to see less of it before they understand what you're trying to do with it. Yeah. So if you, I mean, that's it. It's the choreography sections will probably be shorter because your ideas will read faster on film than they will on stage. So I'm going to show you just a 50-second clip here. And this is just an example of exactly that. Here we go. So this is called Beautiful Day. This link should start at 3 minutes. I just want you to watch till 3 minutes 50. There you go. Okay, hopefully we're all back. Yes, so again, another film I'd encourage you to watch. one thing I particularly like about that one is the cat's cradle. I think it so simply shows me exactly, it makes me understand exactly what is happening with all of those chiffon colors in the wind. Yeah, it's a way to be really, really clear with your audience. And in terms of balancing that out with what I've just said about the choreography reading faster on screen, is that what you'll find is that you need breaks in your film. You need breath. You don't want to see people dancing all the time. It becomes exhausting. And it means that your film can't have any ebb and flow. It can't have an arc. It can't have, it just feels like it kind of hits you and then goes away. Yeah. And you, in order for your film to have a kind of a bit of groundedness and to kind of, to be the best it can be, yeah, it needs to have time to breathe. And these images, these non-dance images, but concept related images, it might just be a dancer standing still. It might be a close-up of their foot as they stand still. You're going to find that you need that time to allow your audience to breathe, yeah. So use those images in those spaces, because they're gold dust for being crystal clear and for giving your audience's eye a break from people and movement. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to zip through a few things which we've already touched on, but just to kind of to clarify or to recap. Location is going to be really important for you, because suddenly when we go into the theatre, we know that we're in a black box theatre, or we know that there's a proscenium arch, and we're forgiving of all of that. And the fact that we can see the orchestra, okay, well, we'll forget about that and we'll pretend that we are in a scene in New York, because that's how the theatre works. On film, people expect that there is some relevance to where you film. So if you film it in the kitchen and it's about a New York bar, people are gonna, it's just not going to make sense. Yeah, so you have to make sure that your film is going to make sense. Now, one thing that is really difficult about that, particularly now actually with venues being closed and things like that, is that you find you need to get permission, or you can't get other people in places, and you don't necessarily have much choice about where you film. Now, if that's the case for you, I wouldn't let that worry you at all. I would use that in thinking about what film I want to make and what film I can make. Yeah, if working in a site specific in a responsive way to what tools you have available is going to be the best way to make the best film that you can make in this time. So if you've only got the local park to your disposal and that's the only safe place that you've got to go right now, then use that. And as you're thinking of your concept, just make sure that fields are going to make sense, or think more about your costume and thinking how you can make sense of it within your choreographic concept. Yeah. And that goes for any location. Yeah. Make sure that it works somehow. Make sure that it doesn't jar and that it doesn't confuse me as an audience member. I would say actually, if you can, probably avoid using a dance studio. If you're making a film, avoid using a dance studio, because it gives the immediate feel of documentation of dance, and that I've filmed a performance rather than I've made a dance film. Yeah. Outdoors, we do not have control over lighting, nor do we have control over weather, which is very unfortunate. Have a contingency shoot day if the weather's bad. Everybody have kind of penciled that in as a possibility, or be willing to get wet, but make sure you've got covers for any equipment that needs protecting if you've got that. And just be aware that even on a day that is sunny, the clouds will change the light. So that's something that can be frustrating when you're filming outdoors. And actually overcast days are the best days to shoot. Yeah, so days where there is kind of pretty thick cloud and it's not going anywhere, at least it's consistent. Yeah, it's the consistent lighting, and that way you have less to do to kind of make the images look the same when you're editing it together. Yeah. One thing to certainly avoid is fluorescent lighting. So if you're filming in a school building, you must not have the fluorescent lights on, because it sometimes, so depending on your camera, it might only be slight, but a lot of camera lenses can't cope with it. Even some phones, a lot of phones can't cope with it if you're filming on phones. But my professional camera can't deal with it. The frequency of the light creates a flickering of the image. Yeah. Fluorescents are really tempting to use because they're so bright and they're big and they're relatively cheap. But unfortunately, the frequency of the light will ruin your film. Yeah. So don't use that. Don't use lights. If you want to use them outdoors, if you want to use artificial lighting outdoors, you're going to need portable lights. And unless you're hiring them, I would try and borrow them from a school or something like that. And if you can't, then I wouldn't. I would go with the natural light. Yeah, trust what you can do with the natural light. And just a quick note about shot lists as well. So once you've gone through this process of choreographing and walking around your choreography like this and noting down, what you can do is you can literally just sort of make a bullet pointed list of the shots, describe it in a way that you understand. Another really useful thing that I do is use Post-its. And sometimes I sketch. I'm not very good at sketching. So sometimes I sketch or draw stick men, but then a description, upward angle of the hook eye lift, whatever, we all come up with these funny names for our dancers, right? And have a description. And that way, Post-its are really useful because you can change the order and flip them around and kind of mess with your structure and see what it might look like in another way. We're beginning to run short of time. We've spoken a little bit about sound. I've said to use the sound of the movement if you possibly can. And the other thing to think about is if you're choreographing to music, think about how that music works in the edit, not just in the studio. Yeah, so you're going to need to leave that time to breathe, as we were talking about, and time for transitions. You might need 8 counts to just watch somebody run and then change into the next location that you're in. And we are going to talk about a little bit about copyright music as well. So I'll just see if I can find that link. Here we go. So regarding licensing, as much as possible, you do need to find your own, have the rights to your music. So that means you need to find either copyright-free music, of which there is masses out there, masses. You need to trawl through quite a bit to find the stuff that you want to find, but it is there and it's available. And the other way to do it is actually seeking permissions, which you may well need to pay a fee for. Sometimes you'll get it for free, but often you'll need to pay a fee. And One Dance UK have put together this really, really useful document, which I've just put a link to there. So finding copyright music is really, it's just really advisable. There's such a lot of work that goes into doing a creative project like this, and it's just such a shame if you are not able to share it, if you want to share it. Facebook will take it down if you've not got any publishing rights on it. Instagram will probably flag it. Vimeo isn't as strict as YouTube, but it's pretty strict. They'll come back at you eventually. YouTube have all the algorithms to pick it up. And if any of you do choose to do this and you create a film that you're proud of and that you want to see if you can get it into other international festivals, which I'd encourage you to do, it's a fantastic thing to do. It's a really brilliant experience. And if you're working with students, it's a fantastic experience for them to have as well. And if you make a film you're proud of, then why not? Like, see where it goes. But festivals will not accept your application if you don't have rights to the music. So I'd really encourage you to find copyright-free music. Or the other thing to do is see if you can work with a composer. If you have links to universities, or if you're able to simply just drop universities an email, or you have a music department, see if you can find a composer to collaborate with, that you can start working with early on, and work with them through the process, so that you've got something completely original, which is an amazing thing to do if you create everything originally. And the other way to seek a composer is to go through SoundCloud. There are a lot of independent artists on SoundCloud that can help. So yeah, drop them a line and see if they'll let you use one of their tracks for free, or if they might be willing to work with you and compose something for you. Yes, I think I'd better hand back, and we can get on with the Q&A, Laura, maybe, and then maybe people can ask me specifically what they want to know.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jo. That has been so helpful. I was frantically making my own notes. Brilliant. And we do have a number of questions coming in, so we'll crack on with those. So the first one from Susan, I think came in when we were looking at the Concrete Kisses piece, but she asked, do you do the change of perspective when filming, or is that done in the edit?
When filming. So if I have a landscape image, which would be my camera, sort of the usual way around, yeah, or if I've got a phone, I've got it on my side. To turn that upside down, I can do that in post-production really simply. Yeah, I just turn the whole thing upside down. If I turned this on its side in post-production, what I'd find is that the top of the image would get cut off. Yeah, so what Eloise has actually done is she's gone from this kind of a filming frame, and then she's had it on a tripod, and she's actually tipped the whole thing that way. Yeah. So yeah, in the filming.
Brilliant, thank you. And the next one is around sound. So do you need to have a separate microphone to pick up the real sound?
It's up to you. Ideally, yes, ideally. It depends if your camera or the camera you're working with has a decent, has a really good mic on it, and it depends on how much other environmental sound there is going on. If there's a busy road nearby, then you are going to need a mic. You can get some mics really quite cheaply from Amazon, wireless ones even that you can plug in, and sort of. What you want ideally for filming movement often is a shotgun mic, because you can direct it directly towards the dancers. If there's a group, then maybe something that's a little bit broader. But ideally, yes, and a good way, if you can, a really good way to film the sound is to have the dancers use earbuds. If they're dancing to music, to have them use earbuds to sync up and dance and film and record the sound with silence. Yeah, so they've got the music in their ears, they're keeping time, but you're just getting the sound, so you don't have to have any low-level music that you're then trying to take out later. That just kind of gets messy, and it's difficult work, that. So yeah, if you can catch it separately, ideal. Yeah, but if not, then just check out what your camera does. Some phones pick it up very, very well. So it really depends. Do a quick test. Do a quick test outside, and if not, do have a look on Amazon. You can get some stuff, some really good stuff for under 50 quid, and you can get some good stuff for under 30.
Thank you, Jo. I'll ask the next couple of questions from our attendees. We have a question about young people working from home, if they're filming themselves, probably on a phone. What tips can you give them to get the best shots? Great, okay.
So make sure that your phone is propped up well. So rather than leaning against a book either side is kind of good, and then what you avoid then is that slight tilt, slight upward angle. if they don't have a holder. I mean, ideally a holder is great, but we don't all have access to those kind of things. So using a book either side is good. So ask them to think about, rather than positioning their phone, if for example they want to film themselves in the center of the frame, rather than asking them to position their phone centrally, ask them to think about where their lens is. So their lens is central. Yeah. And make sure that they're as well lit. Do it in daylight, in daytime, when they have good lighting. The only thing about that is that you've got the changeable daylight that we spoke about, right? And in some senses, there are advantages to filming at nighttime, because then you've got all artificial light, but at least you know it's staying consistent. It's just that the quality of most indoor home lighting is usually going to end up giving you that kind of graininess on your frame. So you're probably going to get a much stronger image if you film in daylight rather than at nighttime with the real light. Yeah, with natural light.
Thank you. And the next question is from Hayley. Which cameras would you recommend for filming?
Oh, that's a good question. So I use a Canon camera. I'm a professional filmmaker. You don't need professional film equipment to make professional standard films. If we're talking about production quality, we're talking about really high definition, high frame rate, all of that. That doesn't necessarily equate to really great Screendance work. There are some really amazing films. There is actually a film festival called Mobile Film Festival, I think, that is purely films made on phones, and Screendance films made on phones. You can do some really high quality stuff. I think it's about what is going to be convenient. Again, it's sort of thinking about it from a similar framework as that location thing, and thinking what is available to you, or what can I get hold of that I can use. If you're not a professional filmmaker and you don't have the time to invest in getting to know how a professional camera works, there's probably not much point in hiring one, or in spending the money on hiring one. Use what you can use, and use it well, and really consider how you use it to make interesting choices and to make great work. I think for me, the particular production quality of a film is an aesthetic choice rather than an indicator of the quality of what I'm seeing. So I'd encourage you to think about what's available to you. Phones are really useful because they're so portable. So I can, even if I want to just change the angle, I can just go like this. There's not much skill involved. I can just kind of do it. I also, if I want to buy a tripod for this, I can probably get one for about £6 as opposed to spending 50 on one for a camcorder. So the phones can be really great, especially if you've got, or you can borrow something like an iPhone 10 or 11. You're going to be getting HD quality anyway with a phone like that. Something you can move with handhelds. I mean, you certainly don't need to have moving shots or need to use handheld cinematography in your films, but I suppose I'm a dancer and I'm thinking about moving. So my instinct is to say, have something you can move with, have something that you can work with. I think it's much better to have something that you feel confident using and making interesting choices, having the headspace then to think about making interesting choices, rather than to spend a lot of money and maybe spend a lot of stress getting hold of really high-end equipment that is actually just really confusing and actually ends up limiting your potential to do really interesting stuff.
Great. Well, following on seamlessly actually from that, Isabel asks if you've got any experience working with GoPros on dancers, or dancers holding the camera whilst dancing during group choreography.
Yeah.
Interesting idea she's had. She'd like to know some tips and tricks. And she also says, thank you, this has been so interesting and informative.
Great. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Yes. GoPros are really great. Something to be aware of. Okay, so make sure they're on really well. I did injure myself using a GoPro once. That's why I'm saying that. Make sure you really think about how the dancers are moving and how it needs to be attached to them. Because you don't want to get an injured dancer, because then they don't want to go on screen, or if they're injured again, if they've got some kind of marking on them. So the thing to be really wary of with GoPros is that, of course, you're facing outwards, wherever you're attaching it on your body, right? So you've got to think about your environment sort of even more, because it's not just the, if you do have a camera looking at the dancer, then you need both directions to be clear to film in. Yeah. And you need, perhaps, if you're thinking about filming a point of view film from a dancer's perspective and then moving all around, then you're literally going to see a 360 view, including you standing there with your notebook and your woolly hat because it's cold and all of that. So you've got to be really mindful of what the camera is going to see on that dancer. It can be really, really effective in group shots if that's what you're thinking about with a group of dancers, to have one in the middle and to see the the movement of these bodies all going together. It can be really, really great. Just be mindful of that thing about what else can be seen. If there isn't other movement happening with it, there can be an assumption that GoPros will automatically give the audience a feel of what it's like to do that movement. And actually it doesn't, because as dancers and as movers, we flick our eyes and we see our foot and but actually our head doesn't do that. So the GoPro will often give you a reading of the point of view that, even as the dancer, you swear to that's not the experience of it. No, that's not what I see when I'm doing it, but it is what the camera's seeing, because you don't see with your forehead, you see with your eyes, and they move of their own accord as well. So if you want that shot, you might need to move your head much more than you would naturally with the choreography to get those shots. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, yeah. If you look at your foot with your eye, but you don't look with your head, you're going to have to look with your head to kind of show, to really demonstrate what your point of view is. Yeah, so you might need to change your choreography in order to get that shot of it.
Great, thank you, Jo. Anne, you would like to know about festivals. So is it possible to submit dance films to festivals if they've already premiered? And is there a list of festivals that you'd recommend submitting dance films to?
Yeah, yes. So, okay, so yeah, there are a lot of screen dance festivals and dance film festivals and film festivals that have a dance for camera or a dance film section. It's a wonderful circuit to be a part of. It's really exciting to submit films. Something to be aware of, it's a very underfunded. I mean, the whole of the arts is, right, but screen dance is even a smaller niche of the arts sector. There is very little money in it, and therefore you have to pay for submissions. It's very rare that you don't have to pay for submissions. And those fees are usually they're often done in dollars. Those fees are usually between $10 to $30. Some of the bigger festivals are $50. A lot of the festivals will have a waiver and say, if you can't afford this, drop us an email and we'll give you a waiver. So that's always worth noting. But it means that you should be a little bit careful about where you apply to, because otherwise you could very easily end up spending £600-700 on festivals that are probably not going to program your work. So you need to make sure that they are to screen dance festivals, that you and that that those Screendance festivals have screened the kind of work that you're making, and they're interested in the kind of work that you're making. It's wonderful because they're international, so it's really kind of exciting. I mean, if you're selected and your film is screened, you'll be invited to the festival. Some of those festivals will have funding to get you there. That's very, very few of them, but it's really exciting when they do, and you can kind of go and see your film in a cinema in another country with other film artists. It's really fantastic experience to have. So I would really, really encourage it, but it's worth noting the fees. It's worth doing a little bit of research, going on those websites, looking at their other programs, seeing if you want to screen your work there, before you spend a fortune doing it. Film Freeway is the thing that you would want to get onto. There's a couple of other, so the Film Freeway, Without a Box, My Festival Home. These are all portals, and you upload your film, you upload the synopsis, you upload the cast, and it's up there then. And then when a new festival comes in, or you hear about a new festival, you'll click apply through Film Freeway, click that project, yes, pay the fee, yes, and it's done. So if you want to do that, you'll need to just get a profile on Film Freeway for your film. In terms of a list of dance film festivals, it's very difficult because they're so changing, and in the last couple of years, a lot have closed and a lot have opened. There is a Facebook group called Video Dance. Let me just double check that. And on there is a pinned document. You can pin documents. Let me find it. Yeah, you can pin documents, and now that list though that is in that pinned document was made in 2016, so it's already out of date. However, there we go. Let me see if I can link to it. Yeah, however, it's a really great starting point, and it makes it, as soon as you've got a few, then you start finding links to others. And you can also see in that Facebook group itself on the chat, sometimes people post when things come up. There is no definitive list because sometimes they're sort of moving all about, but there is lots of Screendance online at the moment. There's Greenwich Dance have been sending out watch lists. Southeast Dance have been having some forum conversations about this. One Dance UK is doing this. There's masses to watch online at the moment, and masses that's out there for inspiration. And it is so useful to know what you hate as well. It's really useful to see work that you think is rubbish or that you really can't stand, because then you really kind of understand what you want to stay away from and where you want to go.
Thank you, Jo. And to add on to that, I have a link to share with everyone, which we'll email out after the session as well. But this link here it's in its infancy, but there's a Screendance calendar. So if you're interested in accessing more Screendance work, that might be a good place to start as well. Jo, we have a few questions about editing.
Yes, I'm sorry we didn't get to that, yes.
And also, so software for computers, but also apps as well, if you're working on mobile.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's the Microsoft Media Editor is on Windows, and that's a very simple program, but you can do a lot with it. And of course, there's Final Cut Pro and Premiere at a more sort of professional level, but you're talking about paying hundreds of pounds then for that software. So if you don't already have it available to you in facilities that you work in, I wouldn't recommend jumping in with that sort of stuff for the same reasons I've mentioned with the cameras. Yeah. Imovie is an incredible piece of software. I mean, it's actually amazing that they give it out for free. It's incredible what you can do with iMovie in terms of transitions, but also in terms of post-production effects. And so you can get things like flashing, and you can get things, you can make things look very monochrome, or you can completely take out the color, and you can add sort of more sorts of sciencey or computer glitchy type effects. But you can also do some really sort of subtle color editing that can really lift your image and improve the quality of it. without too much work. And it's very user-friendly, which if you're at all daunted by the prospect of working with technology, is a really, really useful. It's just so useful if things are made easy for you, and if things are intuitive, rather than kind of having to feel like you're having to Google everything at every step of the way or find YouTube tutorials. Having said that, Google and YouTube tutorials were how I taught myself to edit. So remember that literally every question has been typed into Google. I've typed into Google before, stop weird white lines across FCP program. And I find a forum, and sure enough, somebody at some point has also typed into Google, what are these weird lines? So it is always worth Googling your questions in as layman terms as you need to, because the likelihood is that someone else out there has had the same problem. Videoleap is quite a good app. It can be quite slow because of the size, because it generates things in fairly high quality. It's quite slow, which can be a little bit frustrating, but it's very good, and you can create different transitions, but you can also, again, you can create a lot of different sort of effects. You can layer different effects. You can fairly easily retime things and shift things about. So I think, I'd recommend that one. It has a lot of in-app purchases. So every 5 minutes you'll get a pop-up, do you want to buy this? Or you'll see something really tempting that you're like, oh yeah, I want to use that, I'll have a look at that. And it says, oh, okay, but you have to pay $7.99 to use this. So that's a little bit frustrating. But what you can do for free is an awful lot, certainly enough to make a really great film. The only thing that's difficult about working on a phone is just the interface of it. If you're used to it and you enjoy working like that, go ahead. Otherwise, I think I would recommend using a laptop, or in the least an iPad, just so that you can kind of step back from it a little bit. It is worth thinking about that. It's a very different thing when I watch a film like this, as opposed to when I sit back 3 meters from my TV and watch in a dark room, and even more so if I sit in an auditorium and watch it in the theatre. So I think, being able to step away from it, or if you can't step away from your phone, kind of putting it at the opposite end of the table and turning the lights down, watching your film or watching the working edit in a different environment, in a different way, in a different headspace, can really help you understand whether it's working, or if it's not, what's not working about it, and how you're going to go about kind of remedying that. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got time for just a couple more, so we'll do a speed round on a few more questions, if that's okay with you. Just quickly going back to the festival's kind of topic, can a film be submitted if it's already been premiered somewhere else?
You did ask that, yes, apologies. Mostly, yes, it can do. It's very rare that they would say you can't show it here. I mean, because people do tours with them. You release a film and then you put it into as many different festivals as you can over the next 2 to 3 years. What most do have as a cutoff point, so they don't want films. Some festivals will not want films that have been made more than 3 years ago, or some won't want films that have been made more than 5 years ago. So there's that kind of a cutoff, but no, it's very unusual for them to say you can't do it unless if it's already premiered somewhere else. What is slightly more common, I think it's changing a little bit because our online world is changing. But what some festivals still do now is say that, okay, you've submitted to us, we've selected your film, we'd like to screen your film in the festival, thank you very much. However, your film cannot be online until our festival has passed, because otherwise people aren't going to buy tickets to come see it. So some festivals will do that at the application stage. So they'll ask you, is your film freely available online? And if it is, if they do ask that, then make it unavailable online. Just put it on private, put it for a private link. I would say it depends on, yeah, I think that answers the question about premieres, but just to say as well, I think, you know, it depends how you feel about your film and why you're making your film and what the purpose of what you want your film to do. If you put an awful lot of work into it and you do think that there's potential for it to go into some festivals, don't rush to just put it on Facebook and Instagram and give it out for free, because you've put a lot into that and you can probably milk a lot more out of it. Give it a few months and see if you can get it into some festivals, or see what the reception is like for it at some events. You're always going to be able to make it available for free on Facebook at any point. You can do that in 2 years' time, but it might just be worth seeing what other potential there are, because you don't want to you know, cut yourself off and find that a festival won't program you because you've been freely available online, and actually anybody who was interested to watch that film has already watched it, so we're not going to program it. You don't want that kind of a situation to happen, especially when, you know, you've put as much work as you will do into kind of bringing something like this together.
Thank you. We have a question around working with younger children when you're sort of doing multiple takes, so movement might not be the same each time.
Yeah.
How would you best plan for something like that?
I think I'd accept that circumstance as what it is. Again, work with what you've got. Always work with what you've got, not against what you've got. It will always go better. So if you've got kids that are going to struggle to be consistent and struggle to give you continuity, then I would make that choice now about how you're going to edit it. So you don't need continuity in shots. It's our understanding and our culture of film that says, okay, yeah, he's driving now, and so now he opens the car door and he steps out and then the car door shuts. We think in that kind of a way because that's how our culture works, right? But dance by its form is abstract, yeah. So which is why a lot of dance films are abstract. Not always. There's a really wonderful film called Reach with Bota Siva. We actually screened that at Frame Rush Festival in 2019. It's a really wonderful film. It's really got a very narrative feel, much more narrative than a lot of dance films. But that's from a hip hop background, and it's hip hop dancing and hip hop culture in that film. And hip hop culture has a massive history of storytelling, so it fits. It works with that. It's very much a culmination. I've forgotten what was the question I was answering there. Sorry,
yeah,
Kevin.
It was about planning for movement that might be changing.
So with the kids, I would just embrace that abstract. And you don't need to cut consistently. You don't need to cut for time. You can deliberately show us that this kid is in the background there and in the background there, and demonstrate to us almost that you're not trying to show us continuity. You're trying to show us these snapshots of beautiful images, or these snapshots of beautiful moments or interactions between these kids. So again, it's sort of going back to sort of the very first thing I said at the beginning of this. What is it you want to film? What is it that's interesting to you about the choreography? And just focus on that. Don't let the continuity kind of throw you, because as audience members, we don't need continuity. We don't need A, B, C, D, E, F, G to understand what it is you want us to feel.
Thank you. And this last question actually brings us kind of full circle as well, which is, what advice would you give an upcoming graduate wanting to explore choreography for both live and screen? So the differences there.
An upcoming graduate, congratulations, well done. Yeah, powering through, well done. I would, I'd see if I could get involved in some Screendance projects and get some experience on sets. different sets and different projects are going to be very, very, very different. People work with very, very different budgeting. People work with very, very different processes. People work with very, very different teams, and in slightly different roles, or they understand their roles in a slightly different way. So I would see if I can get some experience doing that. I would make something, make anything. Before the end of January, kind of set a deadline for yourself. I'm just going to make it. It might be filmed in your bedroom, but just start experimenting with seeing what you can put together. Often you'll get clips and you'll think, oh, that will never work next to that. But put them together and see what doesn't work about it, so that you can understand what you do or you don't like about it. Definitely see if just make something for fun. No pressure. There's no pressure on it at all. Yeah, see if you can make something. And as you're watching dance now and choreographing dance now, see if you can start thinking about the kind of the mindsets that I've been talking about today, in terms of seeing not just from the front, but seeing a kind of sphere around your dancer, and just clicking your mind into looking at the choreography in that way, rather than just from the front and just as a dancer, but also as a filmmaker and a director.
Thank you so much, Jo. We are unfortunately out of time this evening, but thank you so much for that session. It's been so informative and really, really helpful. And we've got lots of really nice comments coming in the chat, thanking you as well. So with that, it is time for us to wrap up. If there are any other questions that come to mind afterwards, please do drop us an email at info@onedanceuk.org. We will send out a follow-up email with some of the links that we mentioned as well. And we hope to see applications for Udans 2021 coming in from some of you. And please do have a fantastic Christmas and New Year, and a very, very well-earned rest. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thanks again, Jo, for your brilliant contributions tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic questions. Thank you so much.